want to turn it on early. Mr. McCaffrey and Mr. O'Brien are excused for the evening, but we do have a quorum. Do we have any citizens that wish to speak? Okay, having none, we will have approval of the monthly vouchers.
There were a couple questions on the vouchers
right.
this month, and so I'd like to address those questions. Question number 1 was for check number 312255, which was for waste management, and this is our monthly waste management bill. It covers all sites at the district and all of the recycling and the disposal costs. So that's our normal monthly fee. Check number 312402 for Sprint. That bill is for our monthly Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the district. So that's what the Sprint bill is for. There was a question overall on the centralized printing project and if it had helped reduce the paper costs at all, because there were bills for paper on there. And my understanding is that there was thought that it would reduce the paper costs. It wasn't the main goal, but giving the ability to scan and email versus doing hard copies. It's kind of hard to pin down an exact savings, but what I did was I went back and I looked, and we definitely are lower in costs last year, which is when the printers went in last summer of 2015. So 15-16 was the first school year. And it went from $96,000 in paper costs the year before to $82,000 last year. And prior to 14-15, it was in the 100,000 range. So I do believe that the printers have helped reduce the cost of printing in the paper, but it's hard to narrow that down exactly and say precisely.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry, for looking a little closer at that. A lot of times we will have new programs or we'll implement new technologies and we say, well, we think, ... And this was just one thing as I was looking at the vouchers that came to mind, and it's actually good news. We weren't sure if we would be saving paper costs, but that's a pretty significant, if you look at it from a percentage perspective, that's pretty significant over the last couple of years of savings. So, and everything adds up. So, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and it starts to have a nice cumulative effect. So thank you for digging into that a little bit more.
Not a problem, and it looks like we're on track to still be in the low 80s this year and not creep back up again. So, and we do, all of our paper is purchased through Veritiv, and we do have a district contract with them. So everybody's buying from the same place at the same district reduced cost. So that helps too. But I think we've always had that vendor contract in place.
I don't know about always.
Oh, yeah, always is a long
Maybe
time,
since
isn't
you've
it?
been here, Sherry.
Yes, since I've been here, that's probably a good way to
Veritiv
rephrase it.
was Unisource, and I know we worked with Unisource for years, and I can't say it's always been there, but they just switched their name last year.
Bought Expedex, didn't they?
Yeah, it's all part of that.
Yeah.
They all Expedex and Unisource merged,
Yeah.
and I think this is the new
Yep. Yeah.
company.
So I think we're with the right vendor there. That they have a high volume of business that they do. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I believe that addressed all the questions.
Okay. Committee have any questions? Want to make a motion to approve the vouchers?
I'll make the motion to approve the monthly vouchers.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 None opposed, thank you. Approval of the 2017-18 student fees.
Yeah, our normal process is to approve the fees in April for the upcoming school year. And the main reason, my guess, is why you have this, because it's similar in other school districts, is the mailings start going out for next school year's registration, et cetera, because the school year is quickly coming to a close. So we're not recommending many changes at all to the fees. If you look at the back or the last page, this would be the student fees schedule for next year, and I've read the few changes that we are putting in place or recommending. The first change, and really the board has never acted on course fees, all the course fees in the past, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention that we're eliminating course fees at the middle school level. The accounting burden and the dollars actually generated, and then the collection of those fees, we found some savings in the budget that we can just increase the middle school's allocation to cover that loss of revenue. Again, it's not significant dollars, but I think it'll provide a better parent experience, give kids who maybe don't take a class because of a fee the opportunity to take that class going forward. Next year, we'll be looking at the high school course fees and reviewing those, because there's a lot of them out there, and some of them maybe follow DPI guidelines a little better than other fees, but it wasn't something we were able to tackle all in one year. So next year, we'll be looking at that, but I think it'll be a good change for the middle school for this upcoming school year. In this last Friday's update, we had a little blurb on the DPI, the food service audit. And one of the findings in there was a request or a recommendation or a requirement, I guess, that we increase our adult lunch charges. They want more differential between what the kids are charged and the adults, so it's not, they don't want the federal program subsidizing adult lunches. And it makes sense. I can't have
There's a calculator that we had to complete that showed what the food costs are versus what we're charging on every component, all the a la carte items, the parts of the reimbursable meals, and then the adult meals. And it showed that we were not charging as much as it was costing to create the meals. So that was where they felt we were then augmenting the program with federal funds, which isn't allowed.
With that said, we're not recommending a lunch or breakfast change, but if you recall, for the last handful of years, under the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act, there is a calculator for what those lunches prices should be. And I think the district, I know last year we asked for a waiver and got that, and I think you'd done it a few years, I don't want to say how many, but several years before that, because our food service program runs, it's a very successful program to raise prices just because a calculator tells us to, doesn't make much sense to us. So I'm gonna have you, or asking you, to approve the fee schedule as presented, but authorize us, if the calculator comes out and we don't get the waiver, which we're applying for, that I not come back and go through the whole process again. I'm fine either way. But it just seems a little redundant. And again, that waiver will be filed, when do we actually?
They haven't gotten the 17-18 calculator out yet. They do, but they have to make some changes to it. So hopefully in April or May, and end of April, sometime in May, we'll have that ready and be able to file for that exemption.
Beyond that, those are the only changes we're recommending. There's some comparison data with other school districts. Hamilton School District does a nice survey, which I think was included in at least last year's packet, but I believe it's probably something you've seen historically. So some background information on previous changes in the fees is also included in your packet. And on the topic of student fees, and I can answer any questions you might have. Next month, we'll be bringing back a report on changes in how we're going to administer the collection of fees and how we can be a little more successful in that area than we've been. But that's a little more detailed than I wanted, and with two members being gone, I think it's good I just wait till May regardless.
Yeah, I noticed there was big improvement even from last year to this year for collection of fees. I think we're at about 68% 2 years ago, 92% now.
Yeah.
And, I don't remember where I picked that number off. I saw it somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. In last year, it was a big, 62% was not a very good number to be collecting at. And so that was or 68%. 68? So that was really nice improvement, a lot of movement between 2 years ago and this last year. So that, whatever you guys are doing.
well-
And part of that was the letter that you wrote and, changed the processes a little bit. And
We've gotten the letter out, mainly targeting the high school right now. We had a change in board policy, if you recall, about graduation ceremony and those things. So we've been really communicating in different fashions and forms to the high school parents right now, but that needs to come rolling down a little bit. And some of the changes we have is to provide some motivators earlier in a child's school career with us. Right now, you tend to kind of wait until May of their senior year, and then it's a hotter topic than it's been earlier. So I think we have several things we're going to put in place that will help in that regard. And keep in mind that 62% or 68 is also 68% of a lower budget than if more people were paying.
sure,
So it's not a perfect straight line comparison, I
Sure.
guess. So
appreciate that.
I'll report out as an information item next month and kind of give you some thoughts or our thoughts on why we're moving ahead in that regard.
Any other discussion? Karen?
Darren, do some students actually not pay each year, and then as they're about to graduate, they have thousands of dollars in student fees?
I don't know about thousands. It's not.
There are some that are in about 1,000, 1,100 is
Yeah, I was to say
probably,
8,000 is.
but we do have a fair number that do that.
We've had some kids who I don't know if they've paid career.
And the policy about the graduation seems to have been a big incentive, because I am seeing more people coming in sooner to get that resolved before graduation hits. So I think the communication that Darren sent out explaining what was going to be happening has prompted people to take care of that and take a look at that sooner this year.
And the booklet, I don't know if it's a guideline or what we're calling it, I can't remember what the title ended. It really walks through not only what you can and can't do if you have outstanding fees, but it sets up a communication chain for the schools that on these dates you will send out letters to these people and really maps it out. That document may have existed at some point, may not have existed at some point, I don't know, but we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get better at that. And one of those solutions was the elimination of those course fees at the middle school. Now, whether financially we need to come back a year or two from now and raise that registration fee by $5 or a number, it's still a simpler way to go about collecting those. And I'm not recommending that at that time. I'm hoping we don't have to do that. But it's a multi-tiered approach to solving an issue we have.
Any other questions?
And I appreciate the hard work that Sussex does
Yeah,
to
every
do
year it's
the
great.
comparison. And I didn't really, I looked through it, but I was wondering if there was anything that stood out. I know the recommendation is no fee increases, and I'm okay with that, other than the two lunch increases for the adult lunch and breakfast. I'm good with that. But did anything stand out year to year from last year to this year with any other districts that had done any adjusting at all? Because we couldn't do the year-to-year comparison, but didn't know if there was any change.
I looked at the averages, and I think these fees are hitting a point, or hit a point a few years ago. We only can charge so much per DPI guidelines, and I think we're butting up against that ability to defend or explain
And
that
other
fee going any
districts, too.
higher. Yeah, I think we're all just kind of in the same. And if you look at the numbers overall, registration and there's not a significant swing on average. And we're right, like the elementary registration fee for us is $60. The average is $62.10. So we're right. We're right.
Does DPI even recommend parking fees? I mean, they literally go down to that level also, or are they more concerned on
They
the
tend to be
curriculum
more
instruction and
Academic.
the academic, because we're not required to provide parking. It's not core to the educational process of the school. So that one, I think, is seen in a different light than a registration, which is tied directly to coursework and, instruction. And then the federal government's involved on the food service side of it more.
Okay.
So,
All right. Yeah, I would, I'm willing to make a motion.
All right,
I'd like to move to approve the attached fee schedule and authorize administration to adjust food service fees to ensure compliance with DPI USDA regulations.
Second?
all those in favor say aye.
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 You. We have some information items, and the first one is our monthly budget report.
Okay, I won't take too long to go through it because really it's, as always, everything seems to be on track. We've already touched on student fees.
Not always, but you guys are getting better.
We're doing pretty good, I would have to say. We did get our big equalization aid payment, one of our big payments in March, so our state revenue had a $15 million deposit this month. Overall, for revenue, we've collected 71.25% versus 65% last year, but I think that number's a little overstated because of that money we got in the OPEB settlement was put into that. So it makes it look like we're collecting more revenue early on than we were. So from an expenditure perspective, probably the biggest thing to talk about is the note that I believe Darren had sent out, which was that right now our claims history is looking pretty good, and we're looking that we may have a surplus of 1 to 1.5 million in the health claims area. And as we get further into it and we get more solid numbers, we'll be back at a future meeting with plans on what to do with that.
yeah, if you recall, we did a budget amendment I think we did it in April last year, where we saw the year end was coming in, better than budgeted. And we shifted some of those dollars to maintenance projects. So we might have, if things continue to look good, we might be bringing forth a budget amendment along those lines next month for the committee to consider.
Okay,
Other than that, from an expenditure side of things, we're really looking right in there at 52% versus 53% last year. So I think overall, everything is on track. Our tax payments are right on target with what we're expecting from our tax revenue. And we've put in our deadline to close the POs, so the final flurry of purchasing for the schools should have happened by Saturday, but I'm giving them a little leeway as they come back from break here. So overall, good news on the budget side.
okay. Hold on.
Anything that you want to highlight or point out on the Fund 27 side of things?
Not really. Fund 27 is, we've been getting our grant money in, but it kind of just chugs along. We have our standard expenditures every year, which is our salaries, benefits, our payments to other districts for services, or other schools, private schools usually, for special education services. And then we get our grant payments in our special education aid, and it's all been on target and on track. And we did receive a little bit of a cut in the through dollars. I think, gosh, I should have had that in front of me. I'm sorry. I think it was about $18,000 if I remember right.
Okay, that's pretty small.
The governor's budget the federal budget hadn't been quite finalized, and once it was finalized, it impacted what money we were given for flow-through, and they took it back. So they sent us a revised grant, but that's really only the only Fund 27 news. Otherwise, we're pretty much on target with and at the end of the year, we'll have to augment from our local funds from Fund 10, as we do every year, over to Fund 27.
Transfer, yeah.
Doesn't look like there'll be any surprises so far on that.
Guarantee you Fund 27 will be balanced every year.
To
Not to the penny.
absolutely, it'll be balanced.
Every year.
Has to by law.
To the detriment of Fund 10. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
But to your question, though, usually in Fund 27, the biggest item that can swing year to year is tuition. Some years the kids are more needier, the sets of schools that you're going to or sending them to, the cost can change significantly, but overall, it flows, like Sherry said, pretty steady.
There was one other change this year, and that had to do with the open enrollment dollars and what we get for, it used to be that you'd bill the schools for the base tuition, which was the open enrollment, the overall open enrollment cost, and then you would bill them extra for special education services. And this year DPI said $12,000, for every special education student, and it's going to be more automated now, like with our regular open enrollment. Pretty much it all happens in June with our second from last equalization payment. DPI does all the math, they take out our open enrollments out, pay us for the open enrollment in, and now, but before we had to bill separately for special education, and now that will not happen. That'll be all part of that final calculation, and it'll be a base $12,000 per student. Any students that cost in excess of that, we do still have the opportunity to file the high-cost claim to recoup some of those dollars.
Well, those are some nice efficiency changes for you guys.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Though not having to bill the other schools is very nice. Yeah.
And I think on average, you end up around that number, over time.
Sure.
Other questions, discussion? All right. Next, we have the long-range budget forecast. Darren?
Yeah, I had held off a month on this just to see what the governor's budget proposal was and more importantly, the reaction to it. I'm happy to say, but it's been the quietest biennial budget process I've ever seen in my career. Take from that whatever you want.
For year one, at
Yeah,
least.
right.
Year
yeah.
two is usually,
So the executive summary I have is based on, I just want to talk a little bit about the $200 per pupil categorical aid, which the governor has added to our funding. There's no change in the revenue limit calculation again this year. So I know Dr. Gray, since he's not here, I can say this, has been talking about the $200 per pupil. But our revenue limit's actually going to be falling because our resident enrollment continues to drop. So that little table on your executive summary, the blue sheet, shows that with that per pupil increases, if it stays as recommended by the governor, we would get $2.5 million of additional revenue. But our revenue limit is going to go down $700,000. So the net impact of that legislation, if it stays, and every indication is it's going to be somewhere in that neighborhood, but I've seen it change in July, so anything's possible. We would be looking at a $1.8 million increase in our revenue. That sounds, I always say it sounds like a lot of money, but that would be a 1% increase in our revenue as a district. So it's not, due to our size, the scale isn't there. So with that background, here's the summary sheet of the actual budget projection that I've completed. And if if the proposal stands for the 17-18 school year, that yellow box, it says we'd have a $302,000 surplus. I call that even with a budget our size. We're going to be revising budgets into October. So I don't see any need for budget reductions again this year. We didn't do any last year, anything that took the reduction of a program or anything like that moving forward. And then one thing that jumped out to me, and Sherry mentioned it as well, in the 16-17 school year, when we talk about that year-end number that Sherry mentioned a few minutes ago, the number will actually be higher in terms of the fund balance add because that OPEB settlement's going to skew. And I'm talking about net of that because that was a unique transaction. So our add to fund balance in 16-17 will be higher because our settlement was $5.5 million. And to pay off that Fund 38 debt, I want to say it was like $3.3 million. So I think we need to have some conversations about what we do with those funds separately. We still have a significant OPEB liability. Do we do it to address retirement language? What do you want to do? Because I see it as I want to keep it tied to that topic and just handle it and map it out. And then it'll take a little time for, Melissa and I are actually going to start talking about retirement language, at least revisiting and looking over it again. So again, 17, 18 to me looks very solid if that legislation comes through. I also think if that number should go from $200 per pupil add to the 150 range, you know, it'd be a loss of about $600,000 that we're still pretty close to even. So I think we can sit back and wait. I don't think we, you know, there was a day, and Joe, maybe you remember, and Pat's been on the board, used to do contingency plans and all of that. Those were just as painful as the actual ones you approved up front.
And then none of them were right.
Yeah. I see no need to go through that process or put our community through that process. So I think we sit back, I think we're in a good position, just sit back and let that legislation play out based on the response it has gotten. If it was a lot more of a hot topic, I think maybe we'd take a different approach.
Yeah, we actually used to refer to it as, let's bring out the crystal ball. You know, and it was our best guess, and that's what budgeting is all about, and projections are all about. But you'd like to be as educated about that as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So this, if this holds for 17, 18, this looks like from a property tax perspective, there'd be a 2.66% decrease.
Yeah, again, you're losing that revenue limit authority.
It's kind of that.
We should come out, and there's even more aid dollars being rolled around in that budget, so it could be, aid's the hard thing, it's the hardest thing to project in school finance. But I think in terms of levy and rate, we should be doing very well again. Again, to get there, we have less revenue authority.
Right.
You know, it's not a perfect story to tell.
Questions? Okay, thank you, Darren. Employee Health and Wellness Center update.
Melissa Beck's here. She's our benefits coordinator. I think she's reported out to this group before, so I'll let her present this topic.
Good evening. How are you? How are you guys?
Good.
Excellent. So we meet annually with our consultants and health stat on clinic utilization, then again on ROI. And we just bring to you the most recent utilization report for the clinic to give you an update on that. And that's what's included in your packet there. So I'm just going to kind of go over the high points, and then any questions that you may have on the clinic and the happenings around that, feel free. So starting with page 2, as you're aware, we are partnered with the county and the city in the clinic, and so there's always aggregate data that we do kind of leave in there together. So page 2 just outlines the aggregate highlights of the clinic utilization, and overall, the clinic utilization is at 41% with the 3 entities combined. As far as the eligible population of the 3 entities, and that includes the employees, spouses, and dependents over age 2 enrolled on the health plan, as well as our retirees have accesses with the school district too. So that lumps them all together in that overall utilization. The highlights are also broken down, the city, the county, and the school district. Obviously, we focus on the school district, but just to highlight out the other entities to see where we're at in comparison to them based on that utilization. Currently, the district's at 39%, the city is at 41%, and the county is at 44%. The city is probably the smallest, entity as far as the population goes to utilize it, and that does allow their utilization to kind of run higher because they have a smaller population to pull from. But we are fairly comparable to the county in size, and our utilization is running about the same as the counties at this time. Just to break it down a little bit, you can see on page 5 for the school district, We had an increase in our participation overall of 17% from a year ago, which is great to see. So our utilization has been increasing. As of September 1st, we did roll everyone onto the high deductible health plan. And this is going to also increase that utilization over time as well. It's kind of part of that whole strategic plan and the benefit program. That increase, because that's a great option for the employees in their consumer-driven health plan to utilize the clinic for a lower cost, $25 visit fee, and the prescriptions at the $2 cost. Physical therapy was also introduced this year in the fall, and we've already had 133 physical therapy visits, which is great to see because that's a definite value add for our employees. Physical therapy can be quite costly and also not very convenient to get into appointments. So physical therapy has extended hours in the morning into. On page 6, it compares the first 2 years of the clinic. So the clinic opened November 14, so year 1 is compared to year 2. And it just again shows that increase in our total visits, and also breaks down by entity again what that utilization looks like. With the visits are the key indicators. They break it down, how many are physicals or health coach physical therapy. The majority of the visits at the clinic are what they call acute care or episodic visits, sinus infections, things like that. But we also do have maintenance visits as well, people that are, high cholesterol or high blood pressure. They have actually started to utilize the clinic for those checkups and also to get their prescriptions there. But you do see mostly the acute care visits at this time with the clinic over there. We also drive our workers' comp there. We always offer that as an option as well to help lower our workers' comp costs. So they handle the workers' comp. They also handle our pre-employment physicals, any of the random drug testing. We're working on also the CDL licensing as well, DOT. Questions so far?
I didn't want to interrupt you before, but is the PT also $25 to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just real quick, the first 2 years, our fees were projected, right? Now, moving forward, we're going to be going based off of the previous year. And we had determined that the contract was gonna be,
This year, if you're talking about how our fees are divvied up,
yeah,
they recalibrate it now based on actual utilization.
yeah, this will be the first
Right.
year that we're gonna do the fees that way, right? Because they were just projected the first 2 years.
Right, that is on the
Just
docket
agreed and-
to review that because we're at 44% of the cost as the district. However, our utilization isn't at 44%, so
Right.
that will be readjusted based on the city, the county, and the district's usage.
We should see that go down a little bit, on a percentage basis. Costs for the clinic might have gone up over time,
Right.
but, yeah,
Our percent, yeah.
Yes.
Correct, right. Yeah, the city is at 16% and their utilization is obviously much higher at this time too, so that is on the docket. You'll see that on the last, I think it's on the last page too, what we have coming for review, and that's one of the items. So page 7 just kind of outlines the top 10 diagnoses and prescriptions and labs that our employees and retirees, our population is using in the clinic. And again, you can see down at the bottom, the school districts listed. You do get the episodic, sore throat, strep, immunizations, But then you have your high blood pressure and cholesterol, the maintenance visits as well. Sinusitis, the cough. And then the prescriptions kind of line up with the visits as well, what our top 10 prescriptions are in the clinic. And employees can get, again, those prescriptions for $2, so it's really a cost savings. That formulary at the clinic is updated usually every 3 to 6 months. It's reviewed for what is being offered and what the clinic providers are seeing come through the doors. So it's really, the goal of that formulary is to be carrying what the employees and their families are in need of in relation to cost. So they can't do narcotics, and certain medications, wouldn't project out well as far as a cost. But anything that is viable for them to carry does get reviewed every 3 to 6 months to see if we can increase that formulary list for employees. So there is a change coming up where they're adding some additional medications as well.
Yes.
And that was probably one of the biggest areas of savings were the pharmaceuticals. And although we can't prescribe like narcotics, nor do we want to be responsible for storing those and keeping those safe and locked up.
Right.
From a cost savings perspective, when we first started to look at this a few years ago, we were projecting a fair amount of savings in the pharmaceuticals. Has that really played through?
I don't have the initial RFP in front of me where they projected out that savings.
Yeah.
But with the pharmaceuticals or with the formulary, with the prescription drugs, the cost is less through the clinic versus through our health plan. So there is savings there. I don't have the overall cost savings though.
It'd be nice to just kind of take a look back at that initial RFP, just to see how close we came with some of the projections in the areas that we thought.
Let us take a look. Maybe we could throw that in a Friday update or something.
Yeah.
Just a table
Yeah.
of the area, key areas.
An update would be fine, Darren. Just to see what the projections were like and how close we came and how reality's playing out compared to what we thought.
Absolutely. Okay. It also lists the top 10 labs that are being used at the clinic as well. The nice benefit of the clinic is that lab work, because employees can see their outside specialists and providers and have them fax the lab work directly to the clinic and go in and have that lab work done for zero cost versus an outside lab. So we are seeing that increased utilization there as well as a value add for the employees. And then some of this is also pre-employment as well, like the lipid panel would also be the part of the health risk assessment and things like that. I think we continue to see employee satisfaction on page 8. As far as the response rate goes, we did increase the amount of iPads in the clinic so that we would get that. We had 1 at start, so we added 2 more just for availability so that people had easier access to answer the questions for the employer or for the patient satisfaction survey. So that was able to be increased. But I get positive feedback constantly, as well as through these surveys too. I don't think any doctor office visit would be perfect. There's always going to be hiccups, but overall, I think the employee satisfaction does present well. And employees are happy with the clinic and the services and what is being provided there.
Yeah, the responses year over year, I mean, actually year one had some really good responses in terms of, the privacy and confidentiality and how they rate the services. And there was very little room for improvement actually after year one, but there was still improvement made. So I think that's a really when you're rated so well, it's hard to make improvements, but still improvements were made, and that's what this tells me is that from year over year, they took what people were saying to heart in terms of improvements to be made, and it's playing out. So it's hard to improve when you're doing very, very well, and we still did. That's good news.
The nice thing with the surveys is that we do, take those responses. As far as privacy, confidentiality, some feedback came back and if you've visited over there, the rooms with the old Health and Human Service, the walls aren't very thick. So we were able to add noise machines to help with that privacy because, you could kind of hear voices through the walls at times. And they're also, the warmth of the clinic, we're looking at maybe putting some more color into it, making it more of a warmer feeling when people walk in. So the feedback as it comes into us, our goal is to make it a user-friendly, employee-friendly clinic, still keeping costs down, but improving it as we go and expanding it. And page 9 was just some of the positive feedback that came back on those surveys. And they put together actually a really nice promotional piece that's going to be going out this week, summarizing that patient satisfaction responses, also outlining some of the highlights of the utilization over the year. That'll be going out to the sites and should be in the Connect this week as well.
I see some names showing up there too. So there's some people who are kind of standouts, I guess, at the clinic.
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
I think Courtney's winning. But there's a few others too, Katie and Jackie, and yeah, that says something.
Yep.
That it talks to starting to build a personal relationship and getting to know those people on a first name basis and saying, hey, yeah, these people are going the extra mile. So that's pretty cool.
Page 10 looks at the budget, projected and actual. And in the third column, you see the difference from the projected, and then there's some notes as to why. So we came in under the projected budget, once again, for year 2. However, you can kind of see where that's at. Some of the projections from the original RFP included additional staffing. Physical therapy originally was scheduled for last May. It wasn't introduced until the fall.
Oh, okay.
And then the care coordinator, that hasn't moved forward. So the first year, the projection differential was due to staffing as well. And again, the majority of the differential is due to staffing. As far as the budget goes, you'll see that, without adding those things, that differential is over $300,000. We do see higher lab costs than projected, which doesn't mean that the cost of the medications are higher, it just means the utilization for those prescriptions on the formulary is higher. So the restocking fee, obviously people are using them, which is good. The restocking fee is higher than the projections on that. Other than that, nothing stands out too much on that budget as far as what's projected and what actually is costed.
Questions, comments from anybody? Okay, thank you very much.
The last page is physical, well, actually, it's at page 11 is physical therapy. Again, just showing that budget and actual costs. It's very new, though, only in the fall, so next year we will see more to that physical therapy cost. Page 12 just outlines the employee savings, which I think is key. The whole point of the clinic is to help with the higher costs that employees are experiencing outside, to outside providers. And this kind of shows how many dollars the employees are able to save by utilizing the clinic. So based on those preventive or non-preventive visits, if they were going outside of the clinic, they would incur that much more. So right now, the employees are starting to really save significant dollars, which is really nice to see. And that is also going to be shared out in that piece that's going out to the buildings and connect. Kind of show how that works for them.
Hopefully that'll help increase participation, right?
That's what we're hoping.
Giving that feedback and showing where they can save and that it impacts their wallet, their pocketbook. Yeah.
Well, and with the health savings account too, the goal, I think, for a lot of members is to keep those dollars in their pockets as well. The health savings account can be a definite advantage long-term. And the last page is just the strategic planning. As we go forward, we're constantly reviewing the formulary every, like I said, 3 to 6 months to kind of see what's coming through the door. Maybe taking things off that aren't being utilized, adding things that the providers are seeing a need for based on utilization, employees. So we'll just send emails and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And utilization is really going to drive that formulary list. Fair market value, that gets reevaluated as we go because there does have to be a cost to utilize the clinic given a high deductible health plan. With a HSA qualified plan, there has to be a cost. So that has to be continuously reviewed, that it's meeting fair market value standards. Performance guarantees, that was built into the original agreement, and every year we do review those to see what some of those changes can be as far as some of the expectations coming out from the clinic, so that we're holding them accountable for the purpose of the clinic to lower healthcare costs ultimately. Staffing, still looking at some additional staffing. It has not been approved or gone through at this time, but definitely looking at care coordinator. I'm not sure about another provider at this time, but it's on the agenda moving forward. Marketing, continue to focus on marketing to get that utilization and employee engagement. Year 3 reporting is coming up, and then, as I had said, and Darren said earlier, the intergovernmental cooperation agreement is up for that review of based on utilization.
One thing on those staffing changes, I don't know if you understand how it's changed a lot, but all 3 governmental agencies approve and vote on those changes. It's not HealthStat or CBIZ making that decision. So there is a review process, an analysis done, and then we vote as the 3 partners.
Is that, I know there's at least the one meeting each year, but isn't there more than one meeting between the 3 governmental bodies?
I'll try.
Or is
You
it
wanna
just the
answer?
one?
There's an ROI meeting, a return on investment type of meeting, and then there's one other.
I bet you that's the one I was thinking of, the ROI.
Right.
Have there been any concerns brought up at the intergovernmental meetings that everyone has to focus on? Because I have not received one phone call or any email from a constituent and or an employee or anybody with any sort of complaint at all. And so from my perspective, no news is good news in this case. And especially when you get reports, like this saying that, utilization is up and those kinds of things. So, but I have not had any communication from anybody, so that's usually a good thing because the president gets his door knocked on for lots of things. Now, now we also allow our staff to be able to go there during the day, and how has that worked out? And, have people been taking advantage of that, or are they kind of holding off till after school, or how's that been working out?
Well, they're allowed a 2-hour window to utilize the clinic, and, if they're in the school sites, they don't need to document that time, so it's just based on their site and their ability.
To cover for one another?
To cover for
and-
one another, or building subs, and, I know that people in Lindholm utilize that as well, but we don't need subs, so it's great to have that option to be able to use the clinic and not take out of your sick time.
I think that's one area where it's hard to compare the three governmental agencies because we're providing different things, and our teachers are, and our aides, and et cetera, are with staff or with students, and they can't, run there during the
Right.
day as easily
Right.
as, and I don't know what the city and county does, maybe they can, but at that point, I think it's hard to compare the three entities because we just have different structures of operation. Going back to your original question on discussions between the three staffing, I think, is the one that gets the most, debate between, and not that we disagree, but that's probably what we talk about the most when we have our meetings is at what point do you need to add, and what point, what's that ratio you're trying to hit? At least that's been my experience in those meetings is trying to find that right staffing level.
Questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Our next item is facility planning.
Yeah, just a quick update. Last month, we completed tours at Elmbrook, Arrowhead, and Kettle Moraine. I know Joe went, and Patrick also went. Bill Baumgart went, and,
Amanda?
oh yeah, and Amanda. So 4 board members went along, and we had a handful of school principals also tag along, and I thought it was a productive day. Next month, we'll be bringing back more of a report on how our steps to move forward from that. Again, we have a lot of information, as I put in here, we're a complex entity. So it's gonna take some time to analyze how exactly we wanna proceed in evaluating our facilities and what our goals are with our facilities. So I just wanted to keep it on the agenda to keep the topic going. But we'll have more information to share in a very short couple of weeks, because we turn around with a quick meeting after a meeting later this month, so.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
I see it says here you'd schedule another one if someone wanted to go.
Sure.
I don't mean for you to just schedule one for me, because I was gone, but if there's anyone else that would want to go and couldn't be at the one that day, the big one.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask at the board meeting if there was an interest, either from the ones who went already, but, we could go to different sites. You wouldn't have to go back to the exact same schools, to open it up to the board once again.
Yeah, the one thing that would probably be nice if we could is to see new construction. We looked at more
Yep.
renovated spaces on the last tour. And new construction might be more of a route to go if we do have another one. So Karen, I wouldn't mind going on another one, just to see just more. And it opened my eyes. I mean, the tour opened my eyes to some things that I hadn't seen before, and got my mind thinking. And I think that's the whole purpose of it, is to see what others are doing and how space is being utilized, and how that can impact learning. And so I mean, I'd be open for another one myself.
Yeah, I know, we had hoped to get into Oconomowoc, because they have
Yeah.
two, you don't have to go to both middle schools, if I remember right, they're identical buildings, they just have different names. That would be brand new construction, but we could easily line up you don't have to go that far for new construction to pull it off. And maybe you throw one renovated building in there for new board members to see too. There's certainly plenty of sites out there.
And renovation is really more of what we would be doing anyway.
With
so-
25 sites, I would guess
Yeah,
that renovation
yeah,
would probably
but-
be more on our, but it's also
But
good.
to be able to understand what it looks like from the ground up with a
Yeah.
blank piece of paper, what is actually being done these days, I think is important to understand.
Because it is a different animal, because those new ideas, it's a blank slate for new construction, so you can, what's out there, what's popular. Not that popularity should be the driver, but trends are out there.
Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, then I think we will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Como,
I move to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties and the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business regarding a bypass construction plan proposed by the Department of Transportation, which requires closed session for competitive or bargaining reasons.
second that. A roll call, please.
Mrs. Reinacek?
Aye.
Mr. Como?
Aye.
Ms. Madden?
Aye. Okay, we are
we go.
in executive session.